and always it's a pleasure, a keynote speaker. And this is great company, and this is a humble guy that's about to come up here, but we always save the best for last. And I've known this young man for longer than he realizes. I was good friends with his dad, Bill Koll, three-time national champion, great coach at Penn State. And I watched Rob grow up, and you know, he's done so much. You know, he graduated in 1989 from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He was a 158-pound NCAA champion. He did it with a lot of class and a lot of style. Probably should have won it twice, but you know, how it should have, could have, would have. But he got in there and he won that national championship, and he started really proving himself, you know, because he had big shoes to fill. You know, and your dad's great, and you know, and you got to find your own way. And this is a young man that did. And then he entered into the 1992 Olympic trials. And if we think about it, 1988, Kenny Mundy was Olympic champion. He came back in 92. Dave Schultz was still in the game. This gentleman could beat those guys on any given day. He was one of the best wrestlers, not just in America, one of the best wrestlers in the world. And then he decided that he was going to be a coach. And like his dad, he wanted to be as good a coach as he was a wrestler. And we've had some great coaches in this country. You know, if you go back to Ed Gallagher, who won 11 NCAA team titles and never wrestled a day in his life. He died young. Art Griffith took over that Oklahoma State program, won 8 national titles. Then came the great Myron Roderick, won 7 NCAA national titles. These were great coaches. Then the modern day coaches. Mr. Dan Gable, 15 NCAA team titles in 21 years, 21 straight Big Ten championships, maybe the greatest coach in the history of all sports. John Smith, Cale Sanderson. Well, this gentleman's name deserves to be right up there with those guys because he's done remarkable things. And I know that he could have done, given a chance at Oklahoma State and the various schools I mentioned, Iowa, he could have done that. I'm not sure those great names I mentioned before him could have done what he's done at Cornell. And this year he had a remarkable season. He held hands with one of the greatest wrestlers we've ever seen in the history of the NCAA championships, our very own Kyle Dake. And this man managed him and didn't do too much and didn't do too little and got him to a place where it was almost impossible to get. And he did it against one of the greatest wrestlers in the country as well. You know who I'm talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest keynote speaker, Rob Koll.
I gotta be honest with you, when I heard you were introducing this next young man, I assumed you were talking about somebody else. Because it's been 25 years, now almost 25 years I've been coaching at Cornell, which to me is just mind-boggling because I was called one of the up-and-coming young coaches for years and years and years, and they no longer say that about me. Which kind of speaks volumes to your age. I will tell you, Wayne called me up, asked me to come out here and speak, and I said, well, how long? How long do you want me to speak? He said, oh, 45 minutes. The look of chagrin and sickness on your eyes. Don't worry. Don't worry. And I talked to Frank and he said, no, you don't have to worry about that. So I got my magic marker out and I just started cutting and slicing and dicing. So I'll move it along a lot faster than that. But a couple thing he wanted me to speak about. He wanted 7 issues. And I'll try to weave these into my little Cornell yarn so that these young men, these outstanding young men and future Cornell recruits impressed mightily. And by the way, I am slightly disturbed by the, what's the term? What's the term? Junior terms. Junior terms? That's crap, right? You got Junior Big Red. This is ridiculous. I'm sitting here watching all these studs being given these Maryland, it's ungodly propaganda. But the 7 issues that Wayne asked me to speak about. He wanted me to talk about what wrestling has meant in my life, what it is like to coach Kyle Dake, coaching at Cornell in history before you, how I got the job, how can wrestling in America gain more recognition, hard decisions a coach has to make, what makes a good coach, talk about family relationships, how wrestling affects these relationships, vision for Cornell wrestling for next decade. All right, so sit back. Seriously.
Oh, baby,
I give you like 2 days to do that. So let's get right into it. What does wrestling mean to my life? Like, first of all, and it's been touched upon many times. For me, wrestling was all about competing. It wasn't about participation. And nowadays, I think we've done our youth a disservice by talking about participation. Well, participation is easy. Anybody can show up and play volleyball. Anybody can show up and play basketball or baseball. That's participation. Participation doesn't require excellence. Competition, winning, losing, that's what I learned in wrestling. When I grew up with my siblings, and I was the youngest, I don't care if we were watching TV, we were keeping score. It was unbelievable. And the reason competition and winning and losing should count in life is because participation, it doesn't take any commitment to win. It takes goal setting, it takes discipline, it takes perseverance, it takes sacrifice, it takes all the characteristics that make wrestling special. Now, can other sports teach these values? Absolutely. We are, by definition, our own self-professed greatest sport. You know, if you talk to a wrestler, he almost disparages other sports, and it bothers me because no other sport would wear a shirt attacking wrestling or football, or wrestlers wrestle. What is it? Basketball players play wrestlers. I can't remember what. Give me help me on this one.
Basketball is what. The wrestling is what
You can play basketball, but you don't play wrestling.
Basketball, it's what.
Boys play basketball, girls play volleyball, men wrestle.
Men wrestling, there we go. I saw that shirt the other day at camp, I'm like, I can't believe it. Now, when we think about how many athletic directors, presidents, vice presidents in the university systems played basketball, played football, played these sports that we're attacking, I mean, hello, how stupid are we to allow this to go on and promote it and sell it in stores? It should be illegal. You know, when we want to send a positive message out, the first thing we do is to attack other people, and it's very self-destructive. But we have these tendencies. But I was talking to my wife the other day because my son was getting incredibly anxious about a match. He wasn't sleeping. This was about a year and a half ago. And he would stay up at night and he would have these kind of almost, he was anxious about losing and competing. And she's like, he needs to quit. He needs to walk away. This is crazy. This is stupid. I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world. She's like, what are you talking about? I go, my God, he's learning how to deal with stress. He's learning how to deal with anxiety in a very positive manner. What's the worst thing that happens to him? He loses. He learns how to lose, brush it off, and get back up at it. You know, if he doesn't compete, if he doesn't learn these lessons, then he's going to learn it where? When he's in real life, when he's married and he has a fight, when he's at a job and he loses a job. Better to lose it in a wrestling match. And so for me, that was the probably, without doubt, the most important lesson that wrestling taught me. It was how to compete favorably, how to win, and how to prepare. And I've taken those same lessons and applied them in every walk of life, whether it's my family life or whether it's in my job. No one embodies this attitude better than Kyle Dake. So I'm transitioning, Wayne, into my next question. Being a 4-time national champion, never redshirting, 4 different weights. And when you hear Kyle speak, he talks about pressure. And he talks about pressure not being a real thing. Well, for everybody else in the world, pressure is a real thing. But it's not, it's like gravity. You can't grab it, you can't feel it. But boy, I tell you, you can feel it inside. Kyle doesn't feel that pressure. The reason he doesn't feel that pressure outward is because he's trained not to feel that pressure. He's wrestled so long, he's competed so long, he's prepared so much that he's been able to deal with that. And for us at Cornell, what has it been like for me to coach Kyle Dake? It's been a blessing for me. I was in Las Vegas last weekend for the US Open, and people were coming up to me asking for me. I was wearing my Cornell stuff. People coming up to me asking me for my autograph. They recognized me. I'm thinking, boy, last year I became one heck of a better coach. It wasn't me. I'm living vicariously through Kyle. It was just a wonderful experience. And Kyle was able to do that for me and make me give me some joy, give our family a little bit of joy just by riding on his coattails. recruiting wise, people call, when people are calling me, that's right, Mr. McCoy, people are calling us. People that used to call up Gary and say, I want to be a Terp. They're calling up and say, I've always dreamt of going to Cornell. Well, let me tell you what, no one in their right mind ever dreamt as a little boy to go into Cornell University. They don't even know what Cornell University is, and half the people out west think it's a small Division III school in the state of Iowa, which it's not. And when I first started working at Cornell, that was the first thing I had to do, is to guarantee them, I promise you, I assure you, Cornell is indeed Division I. And that's not an exaggeration. So they put us on, he's really put us on the map, and he's had young men now want to grow up to be like Kyle Dake. Well, you can't be like Kyle Dake unless you're wearing a Cornell uniform. So it's made my job significant. But I think it's less important what it's like to coach Kyle. What's really important is what enabled him to achieve such success. And I talked a little bit about the competition and how he deals with stress. But I want to talk about our infrastructure, because Cornell hasn't always been so rosy. Hasn't always been that we've had it as good, but for the last 10, 12, 15 years have been really good. And I'm going to brag a little bit on our program so we can get it to show you where we are now. The last 10 years we've had no less than 4 All-Americans a year. We haven't been out of the top 12 in 12 years. We had 41 All-Americans in the last 10 years, 9 freshman All-Americans, which is more than any other school in the country other than Minnesota. We've had 10 NCAA champions, 70 consecutive EIWA championships, which is a new record, 11 straight Ivy League titles, which is a new record, and the longest streak in the Ivy League in any sport since the inception of the league, and 53 consecutive victories. Probably of all these things, the thing I'm most proud of is the fact that the last 10 years we've averaged 1,800 people at a match. The reason that's so important to me is because of the following. It wasn't always so rosy. When I came to Cornell 24 years ago with Jack Spates, the reason I came to Cornell was poverty. I was very, very poor. I had just been married. I was finishing up my 5th year in school. I was finishing up a double major, so I had to stay an extra year. And my wife received a call from Jack Spates, and I was actually out of town. Now, I would not be at Cornell today if I was at home. Because by the time I got home, and mind you, the day before I left, my wife and I were literally, and I'm not making this up, looking under our Ford Escort, the floor mats for quarters, nickels, dimes, pennies, whatever, so we could afford a Subway sub. And when I got home, she said, "Congratulations, honey, you've been hired at Cornell." I was like, "Oh, that's good to hear. Are they any good?" She had no idea, but she'd accepted the job for me. So, I guess the next day you can tell who's wearing pants, right? So I dutifully, like a good husband, said, "All right, well, that's great. Let's go." Because it seemed like an exciting opportunity. But when I got up to Cornell, I was in for a rude awakening. I got to be the van driver. We didn't take buses, we took vans. When we traveled to not all the varsity matches, but many of them, we actually stayed in parents' homes. So because I feel blessed to be able to have gone without. Because if I had not been in this situation, I wouldn't appreciate as much what we have today. And so literally when we would travel in these vans, we would stay at parents' homes, we would rent cots. And I remember one particular match where we stayed at Frank Rapacki's house from Massapequa, Pennsylvania. His father owned a huge kielbasa factory, and our morning pre-match meal was sausage and kielbasa. And that's a true story. It was good stuff. 2 other kids stayed with one of the wrestlers who actually lived nearby. And they came in, they looked rather, kind of sheepishly, came in real tired. I found out about a year later that the boy, Jeff Forsythe, had invited all of his old girlfriends home, and they stayed up all night playing. And that's how we did it. And as far as our matches were concerned, we had one mat, came in about 18 different pieces. We had to move out the entire gymnastics floor and put the mat down, and then we pull the mat out, roll it back out, put it in our wrestling room, pull the gymnastics. It would take about 6 hours for every dual meet. The furniture that we had in our office was literally the furniture that I brought from North Carolina from my apartment. And it was beat up old stuff. Jack Spates collected antiques, so we told everybody they're antiques. Nobody, the rest of the people don't know the difference. I had to raise 80% of our budget, and I remember not hitting my number one year, and my athletic director made me write a check for $68.50 because I didn't hit my fundraising number. Shared a room with judo, taekwondo, women's self-defense, and anybody else who wanted to use it. We had one state champion in the entire room, Pat Waters from Iowa City, Iowa. And our average attendance was 65 people. So it sounds gloomy, and it was gloomy, but I didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. And a lot of coaches these days, they come into their situations from a great situation, and all they see is what they don't have, instead of looking for the good. They look for what they don't have, and that's what they're going to see. I was fortunate to come from a situation where we had absolutely nothing, and now that we have everything, in my mind, we have more than everything. Because I look back at this very unique situation, and I'm very thankful for it. But how do we go from that situation to where we are now as a perennial top 5 program? And this is what I love to talk about, because there's a lot of high school coaches out here, there's college coaches out here, and I know how easy it is to count other people's money, essentially, and really covet what the other programs have. And quite honestly, it was 24 years, almost 25 years now, of developing relationships. And everyone can do this. It doesn't take, millionaires, although it does in our situation, because it was developing relationships with many, 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 many people. Last year we had 450 people who made gifts to our program. And when we started 24 years ago, I think the number was about 120. And I had a New York Times reporter ask me, what's the secret to our success? How do we do it? What makes Cornell special, unique? How do you win? And I really had to analyze it before I answered. And it's all about family. It's about developing relationships. And we do it early and often. 90% of our wrestlers over the last 15 years, their first job came from a Cornellian or a connection from a Cornellian. 100% of our current team, the last 5 years, has had internships on campus or in New York City or abroad, set up by a Cornellian. And what does that do? It helps me in recruiting. When we go into a home and I can tell a parent, look, not only going to get your son a job in school, but upon graduation, I guarantee he's going to have a job. And then once he does whatever he does with that, it's up to him. The training situation in Ithaca helps us, because now the kids can stay in Ithaca and train over the summer. But the most important thing is the loyalty that we're building. We're building real brand loyalty with our wrestlers, because when they graduate, for the last 10 years, 100% of our wrestlers have made a gift before graduation. And it truly is a family affair. This year on our current team, 10 of our wrestlers either have a brother who wrestled for me or have a younger brother coming to Cornell next year. And we have 2 more in the pipeline that we're hoping for. And then this last weekend, we had our banquet, and we had almost 200 people at our banquet. Now, when we had our banquet before, we'd have about 50 or 60, and each year it gets a little bit bigger, it's a little bit better. We had assistant coaches there who have all turned down jobs elsewhere for more money. I've got club coaches who have all turned down money to stay here because they want to be part of our family, and they know what we're doing is doing some really positive things. Our announcer was one of my former wrestlers, the voice of Big Red Wrestling, moved back to town, gave up a job to come to be a part of our program and get back to the family. Glenn Weinberger was a 2-time All-American for me, is now our team nutritionist. Gene Nyman, who runs our sports school, is a former Cornell wrestler. I've got Andy Noel, who's our athletic director, has turned down job opportunities, not to be because of us, Cornell Wrestling, but it's part of that whole family. I've got our club coach, Chris Harrington, turned down a teaching job, left the teaching job, took a 50% pay cut to become part of that Cornell Wrestling family. I've got our Finger Lakes Wrestling Club volunteers, I've got 20 of them, who give their time, energy, to become a part of our Cornell Wrestling family because they love our kids. The parents, the academic vanguard, we've got our academic services, the vice president. President couldn't make it, you up me on that one. And for me, it's just so exciting because it's this giant Cornell Wrestling family. And everyone can do that. Now, I've been there for 24, going on 25 years. And every day, our mantra is, every day we can get one more fan. One more fan is all we're asking. And every single person is expected to try to do that. We add them to our booster club, we add them to our listserv. We've got about 3,200 people on my listserv now. And over this slow, methodical chipping away, we're building this huge Cornell Wrestling family. Because when we came here, it just wasn't there. Now, I guess if you really want to be technical, over 24 years, 365 days a year, I should have 8,760 fans and friends. So I really screwed up terribly. So it does take a lot of time, and you have to work at it, but we're getting there. And the key for me has been, I've talked about this to Mike Moyer many, many times, and I talk to high school coaches about this all the time, is how do we do this and how do we keep this mindset, is you have to take your job, and whether you're a coach, whether you're a banker, or whomever, whatever, or a housewife or a house husband, you've got to assume it's the last job you'll ever have. And that's what we try to do, what I try to do. I know this is the last job I'll ever have, so it's not hard for me. But for my assistant coaches, and I see this all the time in young professionals, and it doesn't have to be in coaching, they're looking to their right, they're looking to their left, they're always trying to get something better. And when you don't make the decisions based on long-term goals, you make the wrong decisions. And when I started focusing on being at Cornell for the rest of my life, I started investing long-term. Now, if I knew I wasn't going to be at Cornell, if my goal was to get the job at Indiana, why would I invest the time in developing relationships that are going to be lifelong relationships that are going to reward Cornell? That wouldn't. And that's the problem with a lot of young coaches these days, whether it's in high school or college. The nice thing about this is it never hurts you. So for coaches out there, when you ask what's the key to our success, it's consistency. It's consistency and it's focus. And a little quote that I always come back to is, work hard to make your job great. Don't work hard to get a great job. And that is what we try to live our life by every day. And at Cornell, I've got the right people on the bus that have allowed us to do that. So moving into our next question, Wayne, is how do you think Wrestling America can gain more recognition? And that's a simple one, because I want to use my Cornell model. And I'm sorry if I'm a little bit jumbled, but I've had to make some adjustments for you in this movie. The key to the future of wrestling in the United States, and we talk about a lot of different ideas. I know what the key is. I truly know what the key is. And we talk about the Olympic movement, we talk about how that trickle-down effect affects college wrestling and high school wrestling. I'm not as skeptical as far as the Olympics. We got to fight the fight. We've got to keep it back. We've got to make sure we keep it. But we also got to focus on what I think is the most and single most important component to developing wrestling, developing recognition. And quite honestly, it's high school, it's middle school, it's pee-wee coaching. Our system of coaches has been depleted because of the unexpected consequences of Title IX. When you lose as many programs as we've lost, you lose coaches. And let me tell you what, every single coach here, I guarantee every single coach here has started more young men into this, has brought more young men into the sport than a Kyle Dake or a Jordan Burroughs. And it's not to take anything away from Kyle Dake or Jordan Burroughs, because they're two wonderful young men. But I know that there's not one person in this life, one person in this world other than my parents that has affected me more positively than my high school, my middle school, or my high school, my pee-wee coaches. No one has made a bigger impact in my life. And I know for a fact that there's people in this room have made a bigger impact on young men's lives than a Kyle Dake or a Jordan Burroughs. And they're young, so I expect them to make that jump eventually. But the problem is now also is we lost these coaches, and so because we've lost these coaches, we've lost the teachers that we used to have in the school system. Wrestling's not taught in the schools anymore because there's not enough high school wrestling coaches out there. In numbers equates to power, influence, and recognition. So if you ask me what the key is, the key isn't starting programs at Cornell. We don't even have an education program. The key to growing our sport is to start wrestling programs in teachers' colleges. Like in New York State, Stony Brooks, Oswego's, Oneonta, schools like that are producing teachers year in, year in, out. That is how we grow our sport. And those, it's very simple. Coaches equates numbers equals recognition equals power. And that's, in a nutshell what I believe we need to do. And that's what I've devoted my life to with Mike, or I've helped Mike a little bit I can. Try to help him reach his goals. So, what is my vision for wrestling in the next decade? Number one, I want to be alive. That's my number one goal. Two, I want my team to win national championships. It's very important to me to hopefully win a national championship because I know we can do it. We've been very, very close. But the most important thing I want to do, and I know this sounds very shallow, is I want to continue to grow our attendance at matches and our fan base. Because the best thing I can do for the longevity of Cornell is to have an alumni group that will get me fired if I fall down on the job. Because that's really what hurts at Division I. When schools don't have alumni base, don't have people holding the coaches accountable, they coach until the program becomes, quite honestly, down and out and not worth keeping. And so the best thing I can ever do is to keep our program strong, is to have a whole bunch of people nipping at my heels, so that the second I fall down on the job, I'm out of my butt. But I promise you I'll retire before that. So I thank you for letting me come up here and speak, and hopefully I wasn't too long. My passion for wrestling is great, but my passion for Cornell wrestling is greater. Any of you young men or coaches have any kids who are interested in Cornell, please feel free to call me up and track me down. We'd love to have you. And it's hot here, by the way. So thank you very much.